All right, we are live.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Come
Hi.
on in. Yes, so come on in, make yourselves comfortable. I'm going to share this to my page first, and then I'm going to introduce my beautiful guest who I have on here tonight joining us. This is going to be such a great conversation.
I certainly hope so.
Yes, it is. So just 1 minute. Let me share this to my personal page. Um, okay. I'm going to tag you in it just so people are scrolling through on your page, they can see it. All right. Hi, Jeremiah. Welcome.
Hi, JB.
All right. Hi, Mama. My mama is on. Hello.
Oh, that's so
So excited. So excited. All right. Okay, so we'll give it about 1 more minute. When my clock says 8:10, we are going to get started because I want to take advantage of this full hour so that we can have this amazing conversation today. So let
awesome.
me make sure everything is turned off and not going. Okay. Okay. All right. Hey, you said what up? Okay, you joining on YouTube. Got it. Okay. So we have Facebook and YouTube watching tonight.
Nice.
Yes. Oh, that's what is my phone. Okay. All right. So we are going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome, you all to another episode of Relationship Talks. I am your host, Siobhan Carter, the You Relationship Coach. And what that means is I am passionate about all things concerning relationships, especially the relationship that you have with yourself. And tonight, I am joined by a beautiful woman who I recently met, a special guest, Mrs. Sarah James. Woo!
Hey.
So, and I was introduced to her through my good brother who is watching, Jeremiah Marshall. And he reached out to me and just asked me if I had ever talked about this subject of widows and loss and finding love after loss of a spouse. And I told him I didn't really know anybody that would be willing to come on. And so he connected me to Sarah. And I'm so glad that he did because I talked to her over the phone and just her sharing her story gave me chills. So I already know that this is going to be an amazing conversation. So before we get into it, I want to tell you a little bit about her. Sarah is married to Thomas James, and she's the mother of five sons, one daughter, and she has six wonderful grandchildren. She was born and raised in Hughes, Arkansas, and she migrated to Detroit, Michigan at the age of 15 and remained there until she joined the United States Air Force. First, let me pause there and say thank you for your service, for the time that you served.
My pleasure.
Sarah met and married her late husband, Ronald Wilson Sr., while she was living in Detroit, and he influenced her to join the military. And from that union, they had four sons. Sarah and Ronald were married for over 20 years before he passed away in 2009 from complications related to lupus. And currently, Sarah is a licensed mental health counselor and has worked in the behavioral health industry since retiring from the Air Force in 2012. And driven by a mission to appropriate the Word of God freely into psychotherapy, Sarah left the public sector in December 2019 and launched Kyle Christian Counseling Services, LLC, in March of 2020. Sarah, thank you again for joining me tonight. Thank you. So
Well,
is there so is there anything else that you want to say about you before we get into this amazing conversation tonight?
I think you're pretty. That was a wonderful introduction.
Okay. All right. And so, for those of you who are tuning in, thank you, Faith, for talking about my earrings. I appreciate that. If you are watching, we would love for this to be an interactive conversation. So, feel free to chime in, ask your questions and your comments, and I'll try to make sure to read through those. So, So tonight we're talking to Sarah. We're diving into her story of becoming a widow after over 20 years of marriage and then choosing to love again. And the loss of a spouse can be devastating. So if you've ever experienced it or know someone who has, my hope is that you will be encouraged by Sarah's story. So let's just get into it. So, Sarah, tell us about your story of becoming a widow with you being married over 20 years. And I believe your husband got sick. So, tell us a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. So I married very young. I was 22 years old when I married my late husband, and he was 34. So
Mm,
older man. And like you said, we were married for over 20 years, something like 20 years and 7 months. And at the 10th year of our marriage, he started experiencing these strange medical issues in his body. And after many weeks and many months of going to the doctor back and forth, he was diagnosed with lupus, systemic lupus erythematosus, which is an autoimmune deficiency where the autoimmune system, instead of fighting off the germs, it actually fought against his own body, eating away his tissues.
wow.
Hmm.
Okay.
And so, that lasted for 10 years, and he died from complications of lupus in 2009, as you stated. Hmm.
Wow. Okay. So, it sounds like for about 10 years, you were just caring for him and just making sure he was well. What was that experience like for you during those 10 years of
Well,
caring?
I don't want to make it sound like he was bedridden, because he
Okay.
was the whole time. It was a combination of many, many, many ER visits. It was
Mm,
a combination of probably about three extended hospitalizations where he was in there for at least 30 days. Eventually, he did have to stop working altogether, but he was
mhm.
able to work for a little while on a limited time. And so, yeah, with four kids and a sick husband and being a young NCO in the military, it was very tremendous. It was very tedious. It was
Mm,
very humbling. And, that's where I did a vast majority of my growing up as a wife. You know, I could not relate to anybody who was going through what I was going through at that stage in my life. I was in my 30s at that time. And, my children were younger. All of them were young, probably 9 and under, maybe probably close to a teenager, all the way down to my youngest child at the time. He was just, less than a year old. So it
mm,
was extremely taxing. It was very hard. I did have great support, so
mhm.
that helped a lot. I had my church family, I had my friends, but even in going through that, it's just one of those things that they couldn't take me out of my skin and then
Right.
place what I was feeling at that time. So I
Mhm.
just had to walk through it, and by the grace of God, I was able to walk through it for the entire.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm just thinking about, when I was in my 30s and just like you said, the responsibility of being a mom and being a wife and caring for your husband while you're also in the military. I can just feel the weight, and the responsibility. And so we fast forward to through those 10 years, and then unfortunately, your husband passed away. So, what emotions surfaced for you? What was that experience like, just facing the reality of his death?
Well, it was an interesting combination of emotions. Number one, I wasn't here when he passed away. I was on another continent in Japan, and
Mm,
was still here in Florida with my second son, as my oldest son had just joined the military. So when he passed away, for probably about an entire year, I experienced a very personal sadness and sorrow because I wasn't by his side when he passed away. Now, last, but the Lord just reminded me of when the journey first started 10
mhm,
years before in 1999, um, when he had that first hospitalization, and I happened to be visiting at that hour, and they called a code, and everybody started stepping and running to his room. And right then and there, I was like, oh my God, they were bringing him back from a near death. And
Wow.
it was at that very time, through that period, I was like, oh God, please let me never have to make the decision to pull the plug. It was just that dire when it first started.
Wow.
So fast forward 10 years to
Mhm.
when I was going through all of these emotions,
Mhm.
and I was in Japan and he was here and I wasn't able to be with him. I had a friend over one day and she says, Sarah, how are you doing? It's been about a year now. And it was at that time I got a real, tight thing in my throat because I had
Yeah.
carried that by myself. I never shared that with anybody, that I
Mhm.
felt very sorrowful. And I almost like, a little upset with God that I wasn't there.
Right.
Um, and then the Lord ministered to me and he says, do you remember that prayer that you prayed?
Mm.
And I immediately knew what he was talking about.
Wow.
Said, you never wanted to be the one to be there. Had you been here, you would
Mhm.
not have allowed the doctor to put him, to not put him on life support. And he
Mm.
would
Mm.
have told him to keep him alive on life
Right.
support. And he says, that was not my will.
Oh, oh my goodness. Woo. Sarah.
Instantly was relieved. And I was like, oh God, I did pray that prayer. And
Yeah.
to a praise. And I was delivered from that moment to this one. So I never felt that sorrow again.
Okay.
But also felt emotions of, what about my kids? It's just,
Mhm.
what if something happens to me? Who's going to take
Mhm.
care of my kids? I felt emotions of one of them that's very vivid. I felt completely naked and
Mhm.
vulnerable and almost
Mhm.
like fear. I
Yeah.
felt uncovered. And
Mhm.
that was really strange because for those of us who are Christians, we know that our husbands are our heads, they're
Mhm.
our covering. And
Mhm.
I felt the absence of that. But
Mhm.
then the Lord ministered to me Psalms 121.
Mhm.
And if you're familiar with that scripture, it's where he said, I will look into the hills from where my help comes from. All my help comes from the Lord who created
Wow.
earth. He
Yeah.
a foot to be removed. That particular passage. So every
Mhm.
emotion that I experienced, Siobhan, the
Mhm.
Lord always ministered to me and brought me comfort. So it was a range of feeling that very sad sorrow and grief, that
Mhm.
personal that I held in my heart, to
Mhm.
fear and concern for my children. And then the very last emotion that I can say I felt was one of praise. And I
Mhm.
found a little odd, but
Mhm.
my husband and I had a lot of issues in our marriage for the vast majority of our marriage. But
Okay.
months and weeks before he passed away, the Lord ministered to me and to him about forgiveness. And we fixed
Mhm.
that thing up. And so,
Mhm.
me being the kind of person that I am, I do not like sorrow. I don't like living in regret. I
Mhm.
just don't like guilt and things like that. You have to just, those are not good things to carry. And so,
Right.
I just begin to praise God for being patient with me and
Mhm.
helping us to get that part fixed while he still had his life. Neither of us knew he was going to be gone, just in,
Right.
so not
Mhm.
have that burden to sorrow and to have grief with guilt. It's one thing to do it, but to do it with guilt, I mean, that's just a whole nother ballpark. So I was just
Right.
God for just his mercy and his grace upon me during
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And it sounds like you're, just leaning into God and his word and just really helped you to navigate through that experience. And it doesn't mean it negates or takes away the emotions. You experience them and you also experience God's comfort and his strength and his love in the midst of that is what it sounds like to help carry you through it. Got it.
Mhm.
Wow, that is amazing. And so after your husband's passing and you are adjusting to a new normal and just trying to figure out life and still raising your children and all of that, what were your thoughts about dating? Did you have any thoughts about dating again or finding someone to a companion?
I did
Okay.
thoughts like that immediately. Uh,
Hmm.
so when I say immediate, certainly not within the first year and a half. So
Okay.
somewhere about the year and a half to the 2 year point, um, I started, noticing that guys were noticing me. And some of them I was noticing them.
I know that's right.
And so I had no desire for a serious relationship, none whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So having four sons who are very protective, I
Mm-hmm.
had to make um, a lot of Walmart trips.
Now, how old were they at this time? How old were your
So my
sons?
youngest was 6.
Okay.
My oldest was Ronald in the military. He was like 19. Can you turn
Mm,
for me, hun? He was like 19 years old.
okay.
Then I had like an 18-year-old, and then Aaron was somewhere around 11. So
Okay.
about 6, 7, 11, 12, 19, 20, 21, somewhere in there.
Wow. Okay. So you have your four protectors who are like,
Yes,
they're watching over you and making sure who is this man coming in here or whatever. So
yes, yes.
yeah. So you said the first year and a half that was not even,
Mm-mm.
in your mind.
Enjoying my widowhood. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that may sound strange, but I really was enjoying my widowhood. I had a lot of reflection that I needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I had challenges being a single parent and that sort of thing. Um, but I think that my widowhood, it wasn't your typical one because I didn't have to suffer any financial problems or issues that some
Mm-hmm.
people that I know did. So I was able to focus on the kids. I spent a lot of time with the kids. I was able to get involved with their sports activities and go and sit and be their the classroom mom and things like that. I had been reassigned to a new unit after the death. I had to leave Okinawa and I was reassigned to Herbert Field. And so there was that in that leadership position that I had. So I was pretty busy and pretty occupied.
Okay.
And then my single friends that were single when I was married, we kind of started hanging a little bit. And I was
Okay.
like, hey, let's go out to dinner. Let's go and, go see a play and things like that. Let's go do something. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing I found, Siobhan, was that sometimes the single people, they were struggling with enjoying life and just doing.
Wow.
It's almost
Mm,
as if they were waiting on a date or waiting on to be asked out. They didn't know how to just go out and enjoy
mm,
themselves
mm.
by themselves or with
Right.
or girls or just alone.
Yeah.
Trying to help them out a little bit, being an
I know that's listen, now, if you are single and listening to this, I just want you to catch that nugget that Sarah just shared because I agree with you. I'm single, or I'm in a dating relationship, but I understand, how it feels to be single. And I am a huge advocate of just enjoying your life, whether you're in a relationship or not. So I appreciate you sharing that. And you don't have to wait until you find somebody to enjoy
home.
your life. Like there are things that you can do, to enjoy yourself. So thank you for saying that. And another thing that came up, I remember when my grandmother lost her husband, my grandfather, which was way before I was born. But I remember her talking about widow club meetings, and maybe I don't know if this was a down south thing or if those still exist, but she would have widow club meetings in her house, and like that was her support group, and how I guess she coped and made it through. Does that still exist, or was it just you hanging with your single friends that helped you to cope?
Well, I don't know if that exists or not. I
Okay.
think that you're saying that, I'm thinking perhaps there are some um, maybe some outdated um, ideologies about
Mhm.
what it is to be a widow.
Yeah.
And widows don't necessarily have to walk around with the dark cloth and, you know, hanging their head down and mourning.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I believe that there's a time for that,
Mm-hmm.
but I also believe that it is not God's will. This is me,
Mm-hmm.
for us to stay in depression and to stay
Mm-hmm.
in grief for too
Mm-hmm.
long.
That's
Uh,
so
like
good.
I said, everything has its place,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can't allow other people to dictate how we grieve and mourn.
Right.
Um, and real quick story, I of course, being married 20 years, I have a whole complete family,
Mm-hmm.
in-laws. And I was out of town, went to visit someone within that year and a half to 2 years. And one of the aunts said, "Oh, you're not wearing your ring anymore." And just kind of being a little bit on the messy side.
Right, right.
And I was taken aback by that because it was said in front of so many other people, and I really was offended.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to walk your walk with the Lord
Mm-hmm.
and not allow other people's judgment and opinion affect you. You have to be free. And
Yeah,
by being free and being happy, sometimes other people have a problem with that.
right.
But you're
Absolutely.
down and out and
Mm,
just blah, they have a problem with that too. So you
exactly.
great and be who God has made you to be with
Mm-hmm.
the Lord, knowing who you are in Him. And I
Absolutely.
lived my widowhood life.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, I think that can make grief or your widowhood life better is just being prepared. I had 10
Mm.
years of what you would call maybe anticipatory grief.
Okay.
Was sick so many times, and it was always in the back of my head. What if my husband passes away? What if my husband?
Wow.
You hate that those thoughts come at you, but they are there. It's
You're
just
there.
reality.
Yeah.
So in a sense, there was that anticipatory preparation,
Got you.
and I think people need to recognize that and
Mm-hmm.
feel bad if they are wondering. I think you need to go with that wonderment and prepare.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is find yourself high and dry without any fortitude around you, and just not being able to cope.
Absolutely. And I just want to highlight some of the comments that are in the chat. So my mom says she did have that support, or my grandmother had that support for the Widow Club. She said it came from her church members, but she found true love later in life. Yeah, she
Oh,
actually did. Yeah.
beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And so Jeremiah says most married couples tend to stop hanging with their single friends. Was it awkward to get back involved with them? Like, did you have a close relationship with your single friends already, or was there any awkward relationships?
I'm laughing because I have a best friend, and she and I have been best friends for over 30 years.
Okay.
So obviously, I mean, I am her youngest daughter's godmommy. And
Mhm.
so obviously her husband and I are brothers, that we are brothers, kid around, play around with each other, the whole 9 yards. But for some reason, when I was single, all of a sudden, he had a little bit of an issue with me and with my beautiful single friend. It was just so
Right.
like I'm gonna knock you upside your head. Um, no, it wasn't a problem with me. I think the difference is I was an older woman. I was no longer in my 20s. And when you're
Mhm,
in your 40s going through widowhood, it's different
mhm,
than it's not like you're widow, but you're not single
mhm.
widow. You're
Yeah.
single, but you're a widow versus just being single. And
Mhm.
so with that, I carried the experience of being married, the experience of just life in general, and just again the maturity in the Lord and what the grace that He was giving me. I was just able to walk it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Walk it out.
absolutely. So let's talk about how you met your husband, Mr. James. So, how what was that process like? I remember us talking about it over the phone. So, and it was very, very funny how that process evolved. So, tell us about how you met Mr. Thomas James.
Yes, Miss James and I actually were neighbors. He lived 8 houses from me, 250 steps from my house.
Not that you were counting, okay?
And actually, he knew my late husband and he
Okay.
knew my children before I knew him.
Mhm.
Um, so he is known in the neighborhood still as the Mr. Fix It Man. His profession, he's a veteran also. His profession is HVAC,
Okay.
heating and air conditioning and ventilation. I think I got that right. And so whenever anything would break, there's always that neighborhood guy who can fix it. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's who he was. In fact, with my late husband, I can remember one time coming home from work and he was helping him change out some brake pads or something in the driveway. So I didn't know him, but they knew him because I was, he was just another person to me and I had other things going on. So piggybacking on him being a Mr. Fix It man, on the day of my late husband's funeral, all of my hot water went out.
Oh my
The
goodness.
hot water heater was done. I had about 10 or 12 guests in the house.
Mm.
And so I had resorted to boiling water on top of the stove so that
No.
people could get a bath and get cleaned up. Now, I think the funeral was somewhere around 11 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
12 o'clock, something like that. So I had to go to my neighbor next door, not my now husband, but a mutual neighbor we have. She was allowing me, she and her husband, they were allowing my guests to use their shower. In the meantime, she let Thomas know that my hot water heater was broken. So
Mm.
what did he do? He came down and fixed it.
Nice.
And so that was, I guess you could say that's when I met him on that day
Okay.
down
Mm-hmm.
and fixed my heater. Of course, I was very appreciative and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, um, I'm on a humanitarian leave, so I have to get back to Japan and get everything squared away,
Mm-hmm.
to come back. And so we met. I went back to Japan. I came back here. And so all of a sudden, everything starts breaking in my house.
Oh my goodness.
So when I say everything, the first thing that went out was my water pump.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, there was the garbage disposal, there was the lawnmower and the air conditioner. And these things were going out, you know, one by one over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was having to find people to come and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I paid them. And then I had to be selective because I was very picky. If you were married, you couldn't come to my house
Mm-hmm.
unless your wife was with you or a child or something. So I was looking for single people to fix my stuff.
Right.
Well, he was single. And so when he would find out about it, I'd have him come and fix it. And I'd always pay him.
Right. You're like, look, this is
I
service,
did the
Right.
wrong.
Right.
So, and then after a while, he started expressing interest in me.
Mm.
Yeah.
How long? I guess
Probably
after you.
2 years into it,
Okay.
my widowhood. And, he was
Mm-hmm.
always a great neighbor,
Okay.
very kind, very considerate. And he drives a 1985 Chevy truck. And
Okay.
I ride that truck to work. And some days he'd get off work, I'd be out in the yard, plucking up weeds or doing something.
Mm-hmm.
I could hear him coming all the way around the street because it's a truck and you can hear it coming. And
Right.
then I could hear it when it would shift gears because he would dial it down a little bit and go really slow when he at my house.
Oh, that is too
Oh gosh, there he is, like that
funny.
man. And I would just sometimes ignore him, or
Uh-huh.
I had to be neighborly. Hi, how you doing? And
Right.
what I was doing. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes he would stop by. Hey, you need anything? What's going on? How are you doing? And one time he stopped by, and it seemed like the conversation was going in a different direction than I wanted to. And something like, "Oh gosh, I sure do miss my husband."
You said, let me just remind him, but right.
know, Dial it down a little bit. Hey,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So yeah, that went on for probably a good bit of time. It really did, Siobhan.
Okay.
I played hard to get. I wasn't playing. I really was literally hard to get.
Right, right. So then at some point you all ended up going on your first date. What was that experience like? And there was something that he said to you when you were starting to go in your head and kind of overanalyze the situation. So can you tell us about that?
Yes. So my one of my freezers went out. He fixed the freezer.
Mhm.
I wasn't home when he fixed it. And when I did see him, I said, can you tell me how much I owe you for fixing my freezer?
Mhm.
And he said, how about dinner? And I was like,
Go ahead, Mr. James. He's smooth. Go ahead.
got inside. I was like, ooh. And but he was so kind and sweet. I said,
Mhm.
okay, sure. Just let me know when you're ready to go and where you want to go, and we can go.
Mhm.
And he says, okay, then. So he left, and I tell you, I avoided him like the plague because I did not want to live up to my word and take him out to dinner.
Right.
Started feeling bad after about
Mhm.
maybe 3 months. And so I,
Wait, sir. You avoided him for 3 months?
about 3 months, yeah. And then I said, okay, let's go to dinner. And
Uh-huh.
went out to dinner, had a really nice time. And I'm sitting there and I was like, oh my goodness, he really is a great conversationalist. I'm just a sucker for a good conversation.
Right.
And he could just talk. He has the greatest stories. And I was just laughing and having a good time. And then it came time towards the end. I went to the bathroom,
Mhm.
kind of freshen up a bit. And then I came back and asked for the ticket. And guess what he had done? He
He
had,
had paid it.
and I
Mhm.
said, why did you do that? I'm taking you out to dinner. And
Right.
he says, I guess you have to take me out again then.
Come on now. I love it. Yes.
And back in my head, I was like, I like that.
Right.
I was like, he got a little silky tongue there. I like that.
Right. Right. Oh my
So I
goodness.
saw the romance in him. And I just thought
Uh-huh.
really a nice, I was impressed.
Yeah.
I was impressed. And so
Yeah.
yeah, and so that was our first date, and it was really nice, and we had a couple of other experiences after that, and then
Mhm.
finally, I was being very Sarah-ish, and he wanted to take me to see the sunset. He wanted to go and do this and do that, and I had said, "Yeah, we could go see the sunset." And then I said, "You know what? I don't want to go see the sunset because I think that that is for people who are in a relationship to do, and I just really
Mhm.
don't want to give you the wrong idea."
Mhm.
And so I'd go through my whole lecture whenever we would do something, and
Right.
then finally one day he took me by the shoulders, and he says, "Sarah, I get it. I know you don't want a relationship. I understand." He says, "I can handle me." He says, "Just relax and enjoy. We enjoy
Mm.
each other. We have a lot in common. Just enjoy that." And I took
Wow.
a deep breath. I closed my eyes and I said, okay.
Mm.
And as he said that to me, and as he was talking, I could hear my own voice recording, going over everything that I was saying to him. And I was like, man, I was just quite the nuisance. Oh, yes. Could you dial it down a little bit? This is just over the top. I could hear
Yeah.
all of that. And I took
Mhm.
that deep breath and I said, okay. And I did. And the rest is history.
Wow. So it's like in that moment you gave yourself permission to just let go and
To
relax.
let go and relax. And we started going out. He went
Mhm.
down to the house. I would come down here sometimes. And one day he said, I want to go shopping because he was not good at dressing. And he says, I see I need to step it up with you a little bit. So we
Yeah.
shopping to this place called Foley,
Mhm.
about an hour and so's drive from here. Everybody goes there periodically.
Mhm.
And on the way there, it was a beautiful day. It was a fall day. On the way there, it was just that moment where we both were quiet and listening to the music. And I
Mhm.
kind of had my hand on the console. And he took my hand ever so gently.
Mhm.
And when he touched my hand, I felt electricity. And
Wow.
it was so powerful till I
Mhm.
jumped like that. I jolted and I was
Uh-huh.
embarrassed because I was like, oh my God, did he feel that too?
Right.
But as it turned out, he didn't feel it
Okay.
out later. But I was like, oh my God. And then I knew that
Mhm.
there was something going on with us. And so that was
Mhm.
the fall of 2012, around October. And
Mhm.
then by December, the courtship was really, really kicking it in. And he went in his little black book and got rid of everything. And I wasn't doing a whole lot my own
Right.
self. And so by then we knew that we were exclusive. And he asked me to be his girl, December 22nd, 2012.
Oh, you still remember the
Oh,
date and everything. I love that. So how did your kids react to you dating
they
someone like seriously?
they love Thomas.
Okay.
They always had a good relationship. Apparently, during those times when I was ignoring him, he's an outdoorsy man. He is really a man's man. He was showing
Mhm,
snakes and letting them play with his guns, little arrows and guns and things
mhm,
in the
mhm,
backyard. And he was just being, doing man stuff and
mhm,
like that. So when they saw that we were dating, in fact, he would come over for dinner often. When he get off work, he would
mhm.
stop that truck in front of the house and they was like, come on, let's get dinner. And there were some days when he wasn't there. By that time, it was just my last two home, Aaron and Lemmy.
Okay.
And he wasn't coming to dinner. They were like, is Mr. TJ coming to dinner today? I was like, no, he's not coming. And then they were like, long faced and saying,
Oh,
I was like, what's wrong with y'all?
you're right.
They loved him from day one.
Oh,
And so that is an answer to prayer, because
mhm,
in the meantime, I'm making my list, I'm journaling, and I'm putting down everything that I want should I marry again. Because by then I started thinking, you know what, maybe I could do marriage again. I
mhm,
had laid out my list to the Lord
mhm,
on the qualities that I wanted in a mate.
mm.
At the top was, I have children. There must be a good relationship
Yes.
between my future husband and my children, or
Mhm,
it was a no-go from the beginning.
mhm,
um, and also equally the other way, if they happen to have children, I
mhm,
wanted to be a good relationship with us. And so
mhm.
yeah, that was a blessing.
That is a blessing just to see it all organically come together is what it sounds like. It wasn't anything forced. You just happened to live. You said 250 steps down feet down down the street, eight
Yeah.
houses down. Yeah.
And it was such a beautiful courtship. I mean, it really was.
Yeah.
I've never been so wooed before in my life.
Yeah.
Get everything together. And even to this day, we could go
Mhm.
somewhere and people are like, wow. We would vacation together. We just started hanging out and doing things that we love together.
Mhm.
Just had a lot in common. He's a good road dog, and that was one of my things on the list. I want a good
Yeah.
road dog, Lord. Part about it is God knows who we are. He made us. He
Mhm.
knows our likes and our dislikes. And we just have to come in step with who God made us and
Yeah.
pray for compatibility. One
Mhm.
thing I learned, that is a misnomer, is opposites attract.
Mhm.
Well, that's good in science. But when you're trying to build a relationship together,
Mhm.
you need to have more in common than not
Right. Mhm.
for
I
the
agree.
relationship to work well.
Mhm.
And we do. We have a great, wonderful things in common, and we just enjoy each other so very much. The electricity is still there.
I love it. I love it. So you were courting, and then you get to the point of him proposing to you. Was there any fear or anything like, oh my God, am I ready for this? Or were you just had you let go by then and just was allowing it to flow?
There were no fears.
Okay.
Uh, I had let go.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Being a woman of prayer, God was showing me things along the way. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
was vetted very well. Didn't
Okay.
rush it.
Mm-hmm.
He was vetted by me. He was vetted by my friends.
Mm-hmm.
When I realized I was interested in him, I had my pastors. I said, I
Mm-hmm.
want you to meet my pastors. And
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see how he felt about that. And he was quite all right with it. And at the time, my leadership, Pastor James and Deborah Pitts, we took them out to dinner. It's hard to woo co-pastor Deborah over, but at him, she was like, she told me, she says, I like him. Almost
Wow.
get go. And even my
Mhm.
current pastors now, the
Mm.
first lady, she pretty much said the same thing. My
Mhm.
one of my closest friends, they all loved him. So he was well vetted, by me, by my family, my children, by my friends. And so when he proposed to me, I was ready to say yes.
Yes. I love it. And one of the things that came to mind as you were talking about your process, you shared some really key things. So you said you were enjoying your life, and just adjusting to your new normal and just getting out and having fun and getting to know who Sarah was, in this season of life. And then you were just kind of taking it slow. You weren't really interested in dating at the time. You were just enjoying you, and then you do meet someone and you go through your process. You had a list, you were really prayerful about what you were looking for, and then it sounds like there was a vetting process that you went through. And so I'm just hearing some steps that could be useful for those who either have experienced a loss of a spouse or just single, that may help, if you're looking to get married or just find a long-term companion. And so I appreciate just hearing your process, and I hope you all watching heard that as well and just be encouraged by that.
Absolutely. Because you have to be happy yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to already be happy. I
Mhm.
was happy without Thomas. He was happy without me.
Mm.
Is saying, he says, I came to make you happier.
Wow.
And he came to make me, and I came to make him happier. We pour into each other.
Mhm.
We do not detract from each other at
Mhm.
all.
Mhm.
Um, we both have something to contribute to the relationship.
I
And we
love
do
that.
it willingly. We did it willingly and we do it willingly. So our happiness was already in place.
Mm.
And therefore, our wholeness was
Yeah.
already in place. And so
Yeah.
we just continue to improve upon each other and
Mm.
upon our relationship. We were not even content with just a happy marriage.
Mhm.
We have found out that happy marriages get divorced. And
Yeah.
we have this thing. We don't want a happy marriage. We want an extraordinary marriage.
Yes.
And so we work at that.
Mhm.
How many times have you heard people say, oh, we were happy. We just, didn't want to be married anymore. Well,
Right.
we didn't get married for that.
Yeah.
Married for life, and to keep it exciting, to keep it fun, to keep it real, and to just be everything that we've ever wanted to be with each other. And the fit
Mhm.
is like a glove, a perfect fitting glove.
That is beautiful. And I think you said something so key, that you came in with your own happiness and just being whole within yourself. And that adds to it because you're not looking to pull, from the other person to fill your empty spaces or your voids. And so when two people are coming together who are already full, it's like you're just giving from a overflow, from your own overflow. So I think that is beautiful that you both were in that space.
Mhm.
And so as you're married now and you are just enjoying each other, were there any moments where you had grief bursts or just thoughts about your late husband that came up? And if so, how did you navigate through that with your husband?
Didn't have any grief burst other than vicariously with my children.
Okay.
Even to this day, periodically, they will have bursts and moments of grief.
Mhm.
Um, and so, of course, you feel that and you're there for them and you comfort and console them. In fact, my second son, he was there when his dad died. And
Mm.
he's somewhat of an introvert with his feelings from that standpoint. And I think that he still kind of goes through stuff with that.
Mhm.
I recently had a little bit of a health bout and that landed me in the ER. And lo and behold, he was the one there for me.
Wow.
And so, he had a moment of almost like PTSD. He held it to stuff. So we're going to be processing that. But the burst of grief, they are more so with my children, but with myself, no. I think that what my late husband and I had
Mhm.
was special and unique.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean it was perfect or easy,
Mhm.
but because of what we went through, what I went through, it has made me so much of a better person, so much of a stronger person, so much of a person who has the ability to show empathy, care, and
Mhm.
concern. patience, just
Yeah.
toughness, all of that.
Yeah.
Um, but one thing that is interesting is my husband, he said this, my current husband, he says that it is different being married to someone who is a widow
Mm-hmm.
um, than someone who was divorced.
Mm.
And so with him, that was a process for him to get used to. Because
Okay.
my boys and I, we talk about their dad,
Right.
talk about, different things in his presence, not to be disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
And then my husband and I, we talked about what that was like. Does it bother you when we talk about these things? He said, no, it doesn't bother me. It's a little awkward,
Yeah.
but it doesn't bother me. But we've come to understand and appreciate that I had 20 years with this man. That's
Right.
whole history, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not anything to be ignored, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
something to be that he's now a part of also. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
we even goes with the boys sometimes to the gravesite. You
Okay.
all gone to the gravesite together.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, so different things like that. So there's that sense of awkwardness, but no grief spurts.
Okay. Got you.
Mhm.
So, as we are, I can't believe so much time has passed already. I just want to keep talking, but I do have a couple of more things that I want to cover with you before we end tonight. So, for those who are watching and have experienced the loss of a spouse, and just maybe in that space of just fear of moving forward, finding love again, or experiencing love, and just maybe in that space of grief that they're having a hard time moving away from or moving through, what words of encouragement would you give to them?
Well, I would say to them to process their grief. If they are there, grief is a normal process of mourning. All of that is normal. So it's okay to feel that.
Mm,
But if you feel it to the point that you're stuck and you can't move on and you feel like you're in a rut, now you probably need to reach out and get some counseling and get some help and just go and talk to somebody
mhm.
and process all of that. And that's perfectly okay. But if you're beyond that and you're just afraid to love again, I think you need to take some time to find out why. There's a
Mhm.
reason for that fear. And do not get involved with someone else while that fear is still there.
Oh, that's
Because I
good.
think that it could come back to bite you. And it
Mhm.
could it could possibly destroy the relationship. So any issues that they may be having, I would say deal with them, process them, um, and be okay with it. Find out the why and understand why you feel that way
Mhm.
before you move on. And then after that, just enjoy yourself. Get to
Yeah,
know yourself. Spend time
yeah.
with you. You are
Mhm.
special. You're unique. You're beautiful. You are wise. You are just a beautiful jewel that
Yeah.
God has made and put in the earth. So do those things that you have been putting on a shelf. Take a
Mhm.
vacation, take yourself out to dinner, love on yourself, beautify, uh, exercise,
Yeah,
just do you and do
yeah,
it in a very healthy way. And trust God to bring your mate to you. Trust
yeah.
bring your mate to you and always respect yourself.
Mhm.
Always respect yourself and never let anyone belittle you.
Yeah,
Do decide to go forward and move on into another relationship. If they cannot hold you at the level that God holds you, they're not for you.
mhm.
Bring your own self down to meet them because,
Yeah.
as virtuous women, we don't do desperate.
Right, at all.
We don't do desperate. Mm-mm.
Mhm. And
So,
I love what you said about really just taking time to get to know who you are. Because I can imagine after being married for 20 years, and some people may have been married 30, 40 years, and then they lose a spouse. It's almost like you may have, some people may have wrapped their lives around their spouse, and that being a wife was their identity. So it's like, well, who am I after I'm no longer, so and so's wife? Now what? So I imagine that's an adjustment in and of itself if they hadn't found that sense of self, throughout the marriage. So I appreciate what you said about just really finding out who you are and rediscovering yourself.
mhm,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And finding out who you are, one of the greatest that you can give yourself. It really.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So, what would you say are the joys that you've experienced after choosing to love again and just now being remarried? What are some of the joys and what are some of the things that you love and appreciate about your husband?
Oh my goodness.
Your face just lit up.
Oh, Siobhan, where do I start? First of all, talking.
Mm,
Just having a decent conversation,
mhm.
enjoying hearing about how his day went, how my day went.
Yeah.
We enjoy that. Uh,
Mhm,
there were some things that I couldn't talk about with
mhm.
my late husband.
Okay.
Um, and to be able to talk about any and everything, it
Mm,
feels good to be able to do that, and it's a blessing. And
yeah.
it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
Laughter, laughing again, holding hands,
Mm,
um, being silly,
yeah.
being silly with each other,
Mhm,
um, hearing his compassion, seeing his compassion for other people,
mm,
talking out problems and issues um, with about his job or about my job, planning for our future,
mhm,
talking about our grandchildren that we love so much, talking about our children, talking about the word of God,
mhm.
praying together. I mean, he is like my number one prayer partner. And
Yes.
we enjoy praying together, just everything. So those are those special things. But in addition to that, we love going out to eat. We love vacationing together. We just enjoy life,
Yeah,
period.
yeah,
We
that is beautiful, beautiful. I love that, and I can see your face light up and just glowing as you talk about it's who sounds like an amazing man. So I'm so grateful that you gave yourself permission to just relax, and that he was that encouragement for you, and that you felt led by God to just continue on this journey, which is beautiful. So before we leave tonight, tell us about Kyle Christian Counseling and just a little bit of more about what you do and how we can find more about your business.
So yes, Kyle Christian Counseling Services. I started that after being in behavioral health industry for 8 years or 7 years at that time, and in psychotherapy, when you work in different facilities, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, psychiatric facilities, and so on and so forth, the clients and the patients that come through, it's just so quick. It's so
Mhm,
quick. You don't really have time to do adequate therapy with them.
mhm,
And so I felt the call very early on to do private practice so that I could help people become whole, spirit, soul, and body from a Christian
yes.
standpoint.
Mhm,
And according to the word of God. God's
mhm,
word says that he desires that we be sanctified, holy, spirit, soul, and body. And that
mhm,
means that in recovery, if you don't have all three of those
mhm.
in therapy, relapse is soon to happen. And I'm
Yep.
talking relapse not just from drugs and alcohol, but I'm
Right.
talking about even from mental issues.
Yes.
God is a holistic God, and
Yeah.
our whole people. He wants
Mhm,
all of us healed and ready
mhm.
so that we can go out and do the work He wants us to do. And
Yeah.
so that's why Kyle was established. It's wonderful. I ended up having to get me a business coach that I'm still working with. So even
Mhm,
though it's a new um, mental health practice, it's growing and I'm loving it. I also started a coaching track for
mhm,
those specifically who want to experience sobriety. So I help them along that journey. But it's for
mhm.
mental health and drug and alcohol uh, abuse issues.
Okay. And you are located in Florida,
Out
right?
of Navarre, Florida, I am
Okay.
exclusively telehealth service right now.
Okay.
People can contact me, go to my website, email me or whatever. Hmm.
Okay. And I'm going to add your website information to the description of this live so that people who are watching can go in and check it out, because I'm originally from Florida, from Jacksonville, Florida. So there may be people watching who are in Florida currently and looking for a mental health professional. So I would love to send them to you, so I'll make sure that I include your information on there. Yes. Yes, yes. So thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk with me and just sharing your beautiful story. And I really hope that those who are watching, that they were encouraged by it, and just, were able to take something from this conversation. Just be encouraged. And if you know someone who has experienced loss of a spouse, send this to them so that they can understand that they're not alone, and just help them to cope through their experience. So thank you so much.
I just want to say thanks to you and thank you, JB, putting us together. He's an
Yes.
awesome person, and I can go on and say so much about him.
Yes.
Very much. I got a chance to check out some of your podcasts, and you are dynamic.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So my mom says she loved it. So thank you, Mom, for watching.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. So thank you all for your comments and just for making this an interactive discussion and for your questions. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you, Faith, for adding her information in the chat. So if you're interested, and I will also add that in the description after this live ends so that people can be in touch with Miss Sarah
oh, that's
after this
my
conversation.
daughter-in-law, Faith. Thank
That's
you.
your daughter-in-law. Hi, Miss Daughter-in-law. Yes, Faith. Faith is, she said, yes, this is a family business. I'm going to support my mother-in-law. So thank you, Faith, for sharing that. So until next time, y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been another episode of Relationship Talks with your host, Siobhan Carter. And just remember that a healthy relationship starts with you. So take care of you like we've been talking about tonight. All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.